I feel privileged by this opportunity to learn more about an important training exercise conducted here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and which has benefited not only officers of our police service force, but has benefited the entire sub-regional policing network. We had participants who hail from Antigua and Barbuda, from the Commonwealth of Dominica, and host country St. Kitts and Nevis. Your lead facilitator, Inspector Logan Joseph, has reported that you have all successfully completed this course, and so I extend my own quota of congratulations to all of you. And I ask you, the participants, to stand now and to give all the facilitators a resounding round of applause. Thank you very much. I really do hope that you have had the opportunity to become better acquainted with one, if not the most beautiful islands in the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis. You would appreciate that our federation is a twin island state, which means for the price of one, you're able to visit and savor the hospitality of two gems called St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you. I hope that the fond memories which you will take back to Antigua and Barbuda and to the Commonwealth of Dominica will all go well for the continuing collaboration among our security forces within the region, and in particular in the context of the OECS. The collaboration, which is being spearheaded in part by the regional security system, is just one element of ongoing activities and programs at the regional level intended to bring law enforcement together to achieve commonality in training, commonality in standards, commonality in approaches, commonality in laws in relation to the host of gunfighting and peacekeeping initiatives in which we are engaged. We just came, for example, out of a CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in St. Lucia, in which security loomed large. Loomed large because the Caribbean region has, over the last perhaps 20 years, emerged as the most violent society in the world. And of course, there are islands in Latin America, for example, Honduras, El Salvador, which have higher level of homicides. But certainly, as a sub-region, we have emerged over the last 15 to 20 years as the most violent region. And so we have to do a lot to understand that, a lot to contain that, a lot to reduce that, and eventually to eradicate that. And when we listen to the news in Barbados, where they are now mid-year, perhaps as high as they were at the end of the year last year, we understand why this is a matter of concern. Barbados has had, in recent times, its 32nd homicide, and I'm sure last year that was about the number that they would have had or close to at the end of the year. That is a matter of concern. In Jamaica, which has historically had a significant homicide, we have seen a diminution, but yet still at unacceptable levels. The last reports will reflect that Jamaica perhaps up to recently had just around 600 or 600 plus homicides. Still large, and the year has just begun. And equally, if we were to delve in the statistics for Trinidad and Tobago, they also, I am sure, already into several hundreds. And it is figures such as these that help to enhance, in a negative way, the standing of the Caribbean region, not as a zone of peace, which we want it to be, not as a zone of peace, which we have advocated that it should be in the context of the councils of United Nations. Those figures really throw out of whack all that we are attempting to achieve by promoting our region as a zone of peace. And what that has forced upon us is the inadequacy of our own human resources to deal with some of the challenges that we have to confront, which other societies are confronting in Latin America, in America also, in South Africa, everywhere, except for certain peculiar types of societies, for want of a better adjective, where homicides, in terms of gang-initiated, in terms of violent homicides, are literally non-existent in some societies, because the way in which the state apparatus operates. So you're not going to get these figures coming out of Cuba, and you will not have them coming out of China, and you will not have them coming out of Russia, and you will not have them coming out of other kinds of forms of government around the world, because they just cannot happen. In Cuba, certain things just will not happen. The penalty will be harsh and it will be swift. And it will not just be to the perpetrator, it will be to his families and friends. So everybody has an incentive in maintaining the peace. In our kind of style, free democracies, where people can say and do they believe as they will, without regard for consequences, the challenges are greater. And as you begin to have the discussions about the opening up of societies which some clamor for, we always have to be conscious about pros and cons. When you open up the societies has become the form in Western models, you also open it to all the challenges which our forensic directors speak about. You open it to all the challenges of cybercrime. But you know, there are parts of the world where if you go, you can't be on a cell phone. You can't be interfacing in terms of WhatsApp, etc., because they control these in their societies. You travel to China, certain things you can't do even on your phone. And not just China, but other areas in the world where there is intervention to ensure that that loss of control, which has the potential, in the views of some, to destabilize societies, they seek to control that. And that is why sometimes they talk to your colleagues and friends in Cuba and elsewhere. They say, boy, it's a challenge to get out. The Wi-Fi not working. Because people have come to an appreciation to what these things can do. And ultimately, the test is to hold the state together, or else you become a failed state. And the definition of a failed state is among anything else, but equally in that designation of it would be the failure of the statal apparatus to hold the society, to impose law and order in the society for peace and order to prevail. A failed state, of course, is also one where economic life can't be transacted in a legitimate way, because there are people more powerful than the police and the army who maintain law and order. A failed state could be in Afghanistan at some border or elsewhere, where everyone knows that there is no state power there. It's achieved by whatever name that controls that particular region. And when you have these kinds of development, they conflict and they create societies which in some respect are unreliable. Unreliable because any day the chief can change his or her minds. Our societies are considered constitutional democracies within the region, where the rule of law and rights and obligations are defined. And we are still attempting to grapple with all the changes which our forensic directors speak of. How do the old model with which we have worked the system for so long conform and stand up with all the values? How can it? How can it? Even our laws are not up to date with what is happening in cyberspace, not up to date with what is happening in terms of people under any guise or no guise at all to defame you on internet. How could we respond in a society in which fake news have become so normal that almost everything you read, you better treat it with a grain of salt and pause and think about it and verify? Because with all the expertise which is there, anybody can create anything that is fake and make it real. From your birth certificate to your passport, anything now is open to manipulation. And recently there was an article that says, very soon you will not be able to detect any fakes. Very soon. That the science is evolving, because sometimes you could look at the document and spot, well, no, if you're a keen observer, which every law enforcement officer must be. That is one of the things that distinguishes a civilian from a law enforcement officer. You have to see more, hear more, think more about all that is happening over you and around you. If you could only see the things that the Prime Minister sees, then we really don't need you. Might as well let those who are civilian just control things, because you must be able to see more. I may just see the lady coming up 4th Street. You, through your training, to your consciousness of what is required of security officers, must see a lady and notice her dress. Must see a lady and notice her hairstyle. Must see a lady and notice what bag she has. Must see a lady and notice her shoe. And all those other things that become important for evidential value. You can't be in the same lane like the untrained and the uninitiated. And you have to practice to do these things to enhance your capacity to contribute to law and order in our societies. In our societies, because we are moving regional. And that is why we are attempting to standardize things. So it doesn't matter if the officer comes from Grenada or Antigua. They would have gone through almost the same kind of preparation for policing. And you could easily interchange. Corporal in Antigua come to St. Kitts should be able to fit in as a corporal in St. Kitts, because the training and the standards are the same. And they make way for us to implement the free movement of people, which is part of what at the broader level of CARICOM the CSME is about. People moving freely. Money moving freely. And all those things, if they are to move, we have to have the appropriate systems. In the context of our last CARICOM meeting, we were saying that, listen, once ago we used to have undercover officers. And perhaps in the good old days, nobody knows them. Nowadays, everybody knows. And even within law enforcement officers, there are too many persons who are talking. Too many persons who do not understand confidentiality of information that comes. Too many persons that the system really ought not to have close to anything called law enforcement. Because unless you understand what reliability, that people's life are at stake with every part of an evidence with which you hold, you're going to mess up the system. You're going to mess up the system. Confidentiality is at the heart of security operations. And I hope these things are being taught. Who you can speak to, what you can say, who should have access. All these things in every department of law enforcement has to be reminded, inculcated, enforced, incentivized, or else we are going to have all these breaches. So I was impacted by the remarks of the forensic director. How modernity in law enforcement has to confront itself with long-enduring values in our society. How do you do policing in a context of a society held together by good neighborliness against a society where you don't know your neighbor and you don't even care who over there? Because everyone is in their lane. What does that mean for the way in which now we are going to get information? And it is because in large measure too, we have issues of confidentiality, we have issues of breach in law enforcement, we have issues of people not knowing each other enough, that we have to rely a lot more now, not on the person, but on the technology, to preserve, to gather evidence, to preserve it, and to protect it. Reliability. So since the neighbor will not say, who shot the man or the woman last night in some street in Antigua or in Dominica, we now have to invest in a new pair of eyes, perhaps better eyes in CCTV, in our cities and in our rural parts. So at least we could have a picture. At least we could have some appreciation of who the culprit may be. And since, of course, everybody now is smart, we have to rely more on the science. And that is where forensics comes in and play a major role. And I heard the presenter spoke about everything now there is a trace. And it makes you also, as you live your life, wonder about the good old time days when you had what you had and you had it at home, maybe under your pillow, maybe in a shoebox. And when you need some money, you go to grandmother and she tell you, go bring that box there for me. I'll take out $1 and I'll take out nothing else. Because now, with modernity, we go to the bank and you wake up tomorrow, nothing in the bank for you. And poor you had a ticket to buy today to go somewhere to get treatment. So we are in evolving circumstances and changing times, and we are trying to find the right mix to respond. I think we are settled, though, that we need to do a lot of things more together as a team. Law enforcement is a teamwork within the department and across the departments and across the agencies of law enforcement, where the intelligence is being hidden in our customs and excise. The controller must be in close contact with the commissioner of police and with the lieutenant colonel at the Defense Force if we are going to succeed. these are changing the modes of operation. And in our own context, we have had to bring our defense force out to work in special partnership to assist the police in law enforcement. And I want us to give the defense force a round of applause. It shows then that although in the way things are operated, people have their different and distinct sphere of activities, we must never lose sight of the fact that it is not the whole. It is not the whole. The commissioner needs the colonel, the support of his officers, their intelligence. And that is why in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis, we saw value in bringing the National Security Advisor on board, allowing for greater interaction and coordination of the resources, because they are basically one pool, and have better utilization of scarce resources in our country. That is why in Trinidad and in St. Lucia, we were talking about mobile movement. Well, I'm expressing it badly. Mobile regional security services, particularly for intelligence gathering. And where we are going to move to is that one day we may call Dominica and say, send us 6 of your best persons. We want them to come and to do a covert operation in Barbados. Because they will come, they will fit in, nobody will know who they are. By the time people realize who they are, they would have had the evidence that we need to help our law enforcement. Because you're trying to get around the fact that really having these on-the-ground so-called investigators who everyone knows really defeat the purpose of they being undercover agents. And so the region is considering now training persons and attaching them where there are specific consideration to bring that support. And that is one area now under the security umbrella where a lot of attention is being paid. And I'm sure that before the year end, we are going to have, in fact, the RSS and impacts have been mandated to determine the numbers that are going to be required and the costs, so that the intention was that about September, the heads of government will have these figures so that we could make or take some action with regard to regional mobile crime fighting agencies. And we need to do that. And we have to appreciate that the life that we will save may end up be ours. The life we will save may end up be ours. And that is why it's critical on matters of law enforcement that people of conscience and understanding be consistent in defending and promoting law enforcement. That has to take priority. And you can't be you ain't sure, because the life about which you are in hesitant mode may end up being yours. And what we need are law enforcement that could be respond quickly, decisively to any threat to the peace within our midst. So I want to commend all of you who have participated. Indeed, our forensic director took me away from my prepared text, but it's all within the security frame to say that in St. Kitts and Nevis, that we understand the scientific approach, and we have been working in the context of limited resources. And over the last 4 years, for the record, we have spent more on law enforcement than at any other time. We have invested in getting comparison microscope when the bill came over 250,000. I wondered when I was going to school doing science, a microscope couldn't cost this. What was special about that? And somebody had to explain that this is going to help us to better compare bullets from various types of firearms, thereby potentially improving the likelihood of matching bullets found at crime scenes to firearms so that they can be confiscated, etc., and the culprits brought to justice. We spent over $2.5 million building a modern forensic lab. People have to understand these are investment in the peace and security of our societies. So when people ask how far you will go to ensure peace, you have no option but to go as far as necessary to preserve the peace and security in the country. That is why we are spending $2.5 million to build a headquarters for our explorers group as part of our social intervention programs. You have to spend money to preserve the peace, because without peace, nothing else will happen. Those of us who are Christian wouldn't be able to go to church. And we have instances where people show no respect now, whether for school or church, shooting outside churches, shooting at supermarkets. And in the context of a volatile crime situation, every initiative will be given consideration by my government, as we have done with the forensic lab, as we have done in contracting specialists to come in, as we have done in spending over $5 million to bring CCTV on board in St. Kitts. And we're moving into a second phase where the entire circle of St. Kitts and Nevis will be outfitted with CCTV. These and more we have been doing. And we are doing them, we are basically paying a price. Paying a price to ensure civility and law and order. And we are not yet done. We recognize that these initiatives that we are doing with the Explorers Club is to prevent young people from falling prey, or too many of them, to gang membership. Because the majority of the homicides have been linked to gang-related reprisal and initiative. And by intervening in our schools from as low as the primary level, we are hoping that our young people will explore, find themselves, and a part of law and order. And we are doing other things too. Because it's one thing to have them in the school and you have nice programs with our community policing, but when they go home, the father is a gang leader. The values then there become in confusion. So we have an alternative lifestyle program where we are saying to those who are vulnerable, who are inclined to get into that kind, there is an alternative path which could lead to a better life, which would help you to see your child come of a good age. We want you to choose that path. And that is what our alternative program is about. Giving them a job, so they now do a legitimate job. And we are inviting the private sector to help in that. Because it's one thing when a man has done his time in the prison and he comes out, and he can't get no work because everybody say you're a criminal. You put him in a supermarket, the first customer that comes from the village, Lord, you got a thief in there. You mess up the man's chances. And these are the realities which we have to then develop programs that help and bring the rest of society on board. Because if we take away people's options and choices, we are cornering them. And for those who have been on the pale of law and order, we can't leave them there incentivized to continue. So I want to end again by congratulating all of you for participating in this course, for building camaraderie among yourselves as members of the OECS, and importantly as members of the regional security system, for having a deeper appreciation of the need for digital evidence and how it has to be captured and protected and guarded, for getting a better appreciation for what is happening in cyberspace, on cloud and on land, and how these new emphases in which we are engaged should make you a better police officer. At the end of the day, really, it's not training for training's sake. It's not training for just a break from the job. It is to see results on the go. And I want each of you to reflect upon how, when you go back to your own department, to your own police forces, to your own country, you could put some of what you have learned here to enhance the quality and reliability of your investigation. You could add to a reduction in the detection rate and, of course, help your police force to solve crime. Now, some of you may not be in the best place to do that. So those of you who are from St. Kitts may have to say, Brandy, you need to put me, Commissioner, sorry, you have to put me in a new area. And these are things which may not be done tomorrow, perhaps could be done next year. Because we have to continually begin to evaluate the quality of manpower which we have. And sometimes for today, people are doing well suited for this department. By next week, they should be in another department. Because we have observed gaps in their capacity to be consistent with high quality. We have observed gaps in their ability to hush while investigation is taking place. We have observed gaps in their ability to preserve confidential information, because everybody now have to forward it. And we mess up things. And as we observe these things, Govaya, as the head of the Human Resource Department, has to be conscious of how then we are going to keep up and respond to these challenges to have the best and to ensure that people are doing the best that they can. I want again to say thank you. Training is always refreshing. And after training, you recognize why I need more training. For in this particular area, I still would like to know some more. Luckily, the same cyberspace with which we are talking can help you. Almost every course is there now online. And you can go and read further and upgrade yourself. One last point before I end. It is something that Mrs. Marshall Lake spoke about, and I pass a note to Brandy. Passion. Passion. Are law enforcement officers sufficiently passionate about their work? That they will work overtime without noticing it? That they will work overtime appreciating that this is a serious case which must be resolved with urgency? This is a mother wantonly taken out. My passion for crime fighting tells me if I have to go home this evening and come back at 10 to finish up, I will come back at 10. That is what passion means in the context of law enforcement. You understand the urgency of the moment. And you can't do 8 to 4 on that job. Somebody has already lost their life. And the society is outraged by it. And you have to move quickly. I remember when we had the attack on one of the police officers, I said to Brandy, within 24 hours, if you all can't figure it out, get somebody. Brandy likes his own way. Brandy said we could deal with it. My view, passion requires that you determine in your own mind you will not hesitate to get this resolved. And you have to bring all within a time frame to basically resolve these issues. I want to commend the passion with which Mrs. Marshall Lake spoke to each and every one of you. Whatever you do it with passion, a good passion, because you can have negative passion. Do it with a good passion to get the job done, to enhance law enforcement. Thank you, I commend all of you. And I hope those of you who have visited will come back, see what is happening in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Brandy advises me that he has vacancies, so you can apply before you go. Thank you very much.